Welcome to another episode of the Business of AI podcast. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Kirsty Mac from Illuminate AI. So, Kirsty, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Great to have you. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about your experience of working with leaders and helping them to go through the transformation and change process necessary to be able to really utilize the power of AI. But I'd love to hear a bit about your background first. So can you tell us a bit about how you got to where you are today? And then we'll maybe hear a bit more about Illuminate AI as well.
Of course. So, my background is probably very different to the majority of guests that you've had on the podcast and who I've been listening to. And I'm a coach. So I'm a coach and a speaker. And I've been working for the last, I think it's 22 years, but I don't like saying that out loud. But 22 years working in the leadership space and creating experiences for people, whether it be coaching, speaking at conferences, doing leadership programs. And so that's my background. So from the human side of things. And what's been fascinating, obviously, in all conversations that we're all having, AI is popping up a lot. And with a lot of the boards that I was speaking to, it was very much trickling in with conversation about AI and what does that mean and how do we bolt it on rather than integrate it. And a lot more of the dialogue that I was having with the execs that I was coaching was about AI. And that probably, I was in a world of doing leadership and coaching, and then Illuminate is a sort of trifecta of all business and technology and the people and the human side of things. And so as a co-founder, Billy, the CEO, he was in technology. So he exited a company who was a Microsoft partner, and he's got the knowledge. He has a brain on legs. His body is merely a transportation device for his brain.
Wow.
And we have a few of those in our company, which is wonderful to spend time with them and learn from them. And so his background is technology. He's also very clever in understanding business and how to help technology accelerate business. And he actually started the company. Our whole thought process was, how do we wanted to train CEOs in how to use AI and how to get the best out of it. So that must be, gosh, Tim, that must be 3 years ago. Turns out a lot of CEOs didn't want to know about that at that time. And so we moved into more of the technology and doing point solutions and helping people from a strategic perspective of what AI could do to accelerate their business. And then I would say the turn of, probably mid last year, and certainly everyone put in their New Year's resolutions, let's do training on AI. It completely changed. And so a lot of people came to us and said, oh, you were talking about this training. Can you help us do the training? And so we've got this sort of triple helix of the enablement. So the enablement is helping people to utilize AI. A lot of our clients are in financial services or in the insurance space. And so therefore, maybe that sits more in a sort of Microsoft Copilot space. And then also to help them with projects and to help them with the overall transformation. And it's been fascinating. From a person that comes to technology from maybe a different mindset, it's been truly fascinating to be in the training, but also do sort of, we do one-to-one coaching with senior leaders of how to use the tools, which is a little bit of functional and a little bit of leadership. What does leadership look like now for you? And so where my world was, Kirsty Mac was way over this way and Illuminate AI was in another space. They're very much intertwined now. And it's been a real privilege to sit in these coaching sessions and the training sessions to find out all of the different, I don't know about you, but I think AI has shone a light on that which was already there, right? I think it's shone a light on processes that were great and maybe not so great. It's shone a light on data that might not have been housed in the most perfect fashion, and also where it's been done well. And also it's shone a light perhaps on leadership that was phenomenal and less than phenomenal. And so I think that's why it can be so emotive and so exposing. And so I've been fascinated about all of that.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for giving us that background. I'm really interested in the coaching side of things that you mentioned there as well, because there's a lot that when we think about transformation, people immediately think about the technology, but actually
Mhm.
it's really about a human challenge.
Yeah.
And a lot of the conversations are around how do we transform an organization. But of course, that organizational transformation starts with the leadership. Now, I think, an inherent tension, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but there's often an inherent tension there between the leader who has a limited amount of time and a short attention span often, and I'm guilty of some of
Yeah.
that as well. Um, and then you have their need to be able to understand what it is they're trying to do with an AI transformation and have the
Mhm.
patience and the detail to be able to see it through. But then on top of that sort of tension, you've also got the motivating factor here, which is it should be something around, we're really excited about what AI can do from our company. But I've seen a lot of CEOs and senior leaders who are motivated almost by fear, either the fear of missing out or the fear of the board who say, I've read an article about AI, you need to have an AI, or competitors who do have an AI, and quotation marks, and suddenly they need to have an AI. So they're being motivated kind of by the wrong reasons. And they've got this sort of inherent tension going on about actually sort of not really thinking about it. So as a coach, is that the sort of thing that you address? And I'd love to get your thoughts on how you start to unpick some of those tensions.
Yeah, I love that. And it's, or it might even be the VC or the PE that's saying you need to do this, you need to do AI things. And then as you say, it drives that fear. And I love what you mentioned the word tension sort of 3 or 4 times there. I think there is so much tension in relation to this. I think it's such a paradox. The whole world of
Mm.
AI, I think, is a paradox. Lego did a beautiful, elegant, delightful piece of work back in 2011 where they talked about leadership paradox. And I think it's probably more relevant now than ever before. And how do we hold attention? And leaders that hold that tension well, I think, are the people that are really doing well in this space. And so if I kind of break down some of the things, so the emotion, the fear, I see that a lot. So for example, we may be running a program in an organization, and it's a foundational skills program, and how to create meaning for the utilization of AI. And we've got that running, let's say, sort of 20 to 50 cohorts in organizations. So, running from 500 to a couple of thousand people. And then the senior leaders, C-suite, and probably sort of one down, are in some instances scared to come along to those sessions, because we kind of hold that tension of, I need to be the expert,
Mm.
and I don't want to feel any shame with respect to that. And
Yeah.
or indeed, I want to invest in myself first, and I'm not going to put my team in the cohort. These sort of tensions come through, which is fascinating. So I think in the coaching, what has been really curious to see is, I guess we look at it from 2 levels. So there's a bit of my coaching as well as the brains on legs coaching for the people that look at it from a technology perspective. And we look at the functionality. So this is how you can get the best out of this. And this is the conversations you want to be having with your team. And it's getting them to get the productivity and efficiency from an individual perspective, sometimes with their EAs as part of that conversation. And then also how do we then get you to think collectively? So as we're seeing with a lot of the reports that are coming through, that individually organizations, people are seeing individual gains, 11 hours to 16 hours of gains during the week, of time back, albeit that we're filling it up with other things, but we're not seeing it on the bottom line yet. So how do we start those collective conversations to ensure that we are, not deduping things, and that we are getting the best return for everyone in the organization and not just looking at it individually. So some of those conversations come through. We talk about paradox. We talk about the notion of AI is incredibly exciting and terrifying.
Yeah.
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 AI is it could complement our role. It could also be a competitor to our role. AI could reduce our cognitive load and increase our cognitive load. And I think what has been curious in the coaching has been helping leaders notice the paradox and tension that exist and surface the paradox and tension that exists in their organization, and then speak to that. And what does that look like? And what conversations could you have in relation to that? And for them to have compassion for the people in their span of care, to know that that is happening. And when we come on and say, you know, we've had a board meeting and we must do AI, or this is what we're doing, or here's the project, we're doing this, or the VCs say this, then if we hold that level of compassion to understand those paradox, and to understand how best to communicate the possibility that exists within AI, and also what else can come up with that. So a lot of those tensions are curious.
Yeah, thank you for breaking that down there. And I think what you mentioned there about this concept of shame, that's a really powerful emotion as well, and people don't like to feel shame. It is this concept that everyone wants to be an expert, and I think it's a sort of something which we've learned as you've kind of gone into your professional career. You're told you have to be an expert in something, and so by the time you get to the top, often you don't want to lose face by admitting you don't know something. And people tend to be quite good at being able to blag their way through things when they don't know the answer to questions. Now, that culture, that mindset is the wrong culture for digital transformation. And this concept of a digital mindset, which has been around for 10, 15 years now, critical to that is not just curiosity to be able to discover new ideas, new technologies, but also the humility. And I think it's the humility which is really important here, because often as a leader, you need to admit that you're not an expert. And only when you can admit you're not an expert, then you give permission to your senior leadership team and to your managers and to the whole company for them to understand they're not an expert. And it's a really big cultural shift which you need to go through in the organization, but it's so critical that it comes from the top.
Yes.
How do you help the leaders that you deal with to kind of understand how to make themselves vulnerable in that way?
I think I love all of that, all of what you just said. Humility is so important. And it's really curious. I think at the very start, and I've seen it more and more, of when people started to use AI, they felt like they were cheating. And it's, that happened really quickly. Maybe I shouldn't do that, when we start shooting all over ourselves. And that level of feeling there, it is impossible for us to know everything about this space. It is, even the brains on legs I have in the organization, they cannot know it. And allowing leaders to know it is okay to not know all of this, because it is actually impossible for us to know all of this. Our cognitive capacity is slower and is not as vast as the collective AI. And so that's okay to not know. But what is really great, to use your curiosity element, is, if you don't know, just say, well, let's find out. There's something about the element of play. And so even in coaching with execs, and say, they may ask me a question and say, so Kirsty, does it do this? And say, I don't know. Let's find out. It didn't do it yesterday, but it might do it today. And that's all right. And I think to hold that and to allow us to be okay to say we don't know, and to be really comfortable with being uncomfortable, and to allow everyone's team to feel like that. And we always use the word yet. It doesn't do it yet. And you'll know yourself. We could prep ourselves to go into a client, and we'll be, in the demo tenant and sorting it. And then we go to demo it, and guess what? It now does it, or it's moved something or whatever. And we're like, oh, okay, well, that's different. It is impossible for us to know this. And I think we have it's really curious that I don't think this is just a skill element. I think it's an identity element for some people. And I think we've got this unraveling of, and this kind of spectrum of cognitive surrender to cognitive rigidity. So from a, if you look at LinkedIn, there's probably, you can see a lot of people that have surrendered their cognition to an LLM and just not checked it and not had that level of discernment. And then we have the opposite end of, it's never going to touch me. It's never going to affect me. And I've been X amount of experience and that this is who I am. And to work with that that's the conversations that we're getting into, which is just delightful because I'm thinking about like sort of the last sort of 6 people that we've spoken to over the last couple of weeks, all of them have said, oh, I didn't know we'd have this conversation. And this is helping me to understand the magnitude of this. And now I understand the magnitude of this for myself. I can sit in a space to help my team. And I think that helps with that level of vulnerability and that level of awareness and that level of humility. We will never know all of this, and that's okay.
Yeah. I think what you touched upon the end there was how to make it relevant to the individuals. So if it's not relevant to you, then you kind of don't care, right? Because there's so many other things which you're constantly your attention's being drawn towards. So at the leadership level, how do you make it relevant to them, and to break it down into the appropriate chunks of information that they can process? But at the employee or the manager level, how can you actually make it relevant to what their needs are and help them to understand it and trust it? But there was a really interesting word that you used, which I love, which is play. And I think that's part of what is missing in this in organizations that we see that haven't gone through this digital transformation, that haven't got this digital mindset, that they don't understand the purpose of play. I always think back to how children learn. Little babies learn through playing. It's fun. It's something that they do instinctively, but they make lots of mistakes. They figure things out, and it's fun. And somehow in our corporate professional lives, we've unlearned the power of play to be able to learn these things. And we need to be able to re-inject that sort of fun back into learning. But it's because the perceived risks are that if you get something wrong, that's a bad outcome. It's going to make you look bad, and then people are going to think the worst of you. So we almost need to kind of change the sort of the metrics, and say it's okay to make mistakes. That's how we learn, as long as you've got the data to understand what went wrong, so you can learn from it. That sort of iterative, data-driven, experimental process. So thinking about now the sort of the rest of the organization, not just the leaders, how do you think we can start to sort of build in that capability, that sort of compassion, you called it before, that's going to allow the managers to manage teams in a way that makes play more central to learning?
I think it comes back to your point about meaning. I could come and show someone, here's the buttons, this is what you press. But if I don't know why I'm pressing them, I'm just going to be, well, that's fascinating. I've just had some time with a random redhead from Glasgow. That's not really helpful to me. And so if, in the training that I've seen work really well, and I'm biased with ours, but, in other spaces as well, that we don't touch the AI until the 3rd session. We are talking about mindset first. We're talking about the human skills that help, which is discernment, which is humility, which is resilience, which is communication, which is listening, which is systems thinking, all of these components. And then we are getting them to think about their day and say, this is where AI can integrate into your day. So what does your day look like? So if I'm sitting with a senior exec, I'm saying, tell me about an average day, which I know doesn't exist, but give me an average day, and then I will create meaning attached to that. In the sessions, and for the teams that are managers and people and everyone in the organization, we're saying, look at your day. And these are the average stops on a day that we can integrate AI into, but talk through your day. What does it mean to you? How do we create meaning? And whilst you're in this session, what is the thing that's in your head that you think, I should be doing this, but I'm sitting in this session? Let's work on that. Let's work on that as you sit here. If that's something that can be done with AI, I'm not saying to AI wash everything, but let's work on that, and to have people walk out and go, oh my goodness, I have just done in 45 minutes something that would have taken me 17 hours. Now they've walked out there and they've got a whole body experience. They're like, okay, now I'm in, right? They haven't just got it
Yeah.
in their sort of, neck top computer. They've firmly got it and they're like, right, okay, how else can I integrate it? What else can I do? How can I save time? How can I really make this work for me? And so I think if we can generate meaning for people, and I think as humans, we are meaning making machines, we operate on meaning, AI operates on knowledge. How do we get them working both together? And how do we create a way that allows people to say, well, if it could do all of this, and that's one of the things that makes me full of joy and sometimes a little bit sad in some of the sessions. What we do is we like, if only it could do this. So if we think about insert appropriate LLM of choice, if only it could do this, and we, post-it note or whatever, klaxon or whatever, all of that. If it could do this, what would you do? And some of the answers to those questions, and I would say in all of the clients that we work with, have themes of, I could do my job. I could coach my team. I could build better relationships with brokers. I could have more informed decision making. And so I defy any person from a C-suite or otherwise if I gave them that list, they would not want that for their team. And so therefore the integration and helping people with the meaning for them individually could help them to do their job in a way in which probably fits all the values that they have on their website.
Yeah.
And I've seen that time and time again. We can put our values on a lanyard and we can put it on a website, but it's not until you spend time with people in the culture that we see what the values are. And I can see that tension, if we hold that tension well, it can help people to do the job they were brought in to do and to do it well.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. There's so much that is a sort of challenge for businesses, I think, as they're sort of approaching how to drive AI transformation. And the concept of digital transformation has been around for 10, 15 years now. Some of the companies that we see that have gone through that initial wave of transformation, for them, AI is just another technology. Because they've been doing all these things, they've been being curious, they've been being humble, they've been scanning the horizon, they've been experimenting. So for them, AI is just another technology. Do you think that similarly, we maybe shouldn't be talking about AI transformation, because there's going to be another thing coming up soon, which will be another technology, whether that be, well, maybe agentic, which is a flavor of AI, or something else. And actually, we need to be thinking about, encouraging people to be looking at the business need and actually what they're trying to solve using a technology, whatever that is, rather than just the sort of like the badge of AI. Bearing in mind that we're all excited about AI, and that says UK AI.
Yeah, I do. I do, and I think was it? I was listening to Tom, I think, on your other podcast, which was talking about owning the operational problem, the workflow, like looking at that, the accountability, the responsibility. There is, as you say, Tim, there's going to be another flavor. I remember very vividly sitting outside a training session in one of our clients, and the COO walked out, and she said, this is huge, isn't it? And I said, yeah, it is. And she said, no, this is really huge. And I said, yeah. She said, it's not about the technology, is it? I said, no. And, I think I was fairly slow to come to that realization as well, even with my background. And I think this is how can this, if fundamentally, if we started any of people who are listening, if you start your business today, how would you run the business now with AI? But what would people be doing? How would they be repositioned? Right? We talk a lot about repositioning versus reskilling. Rather, this isn't just about reskilling people. This is about repositioning. So the reposition could be for the individual of, hey, I'm an underwriter. What could this look like fueled by AI? Or it could be, this is the underwriting division. What does that mean as a reposition? Or it could be the reposition of insurance. I think we have a massive opportunity in this space to look at how we go about the business of doing business. And I think we've got a very exciting time for us all to do. And as leaders, I think if we really grasp that, I think there's a delicious amount of possibility ahead of us, as well as the dark side of that as well.
Yeah. Brilliant. And where are you seeing this are the areas of most interest in this? Who's embracing it? And maybe, the opposite of that, where are you seeing, the least engagement and interest come from? Just interested to see how that sort of pans out across what you're seeing across the country, across different sectors.
I think we are, from a real percentage of the business focus is financial services and insurance. So I think there's a real desire in that space. And also, I would say there's some pockets of cognitive rigidity that sit in there as well, especially with an experience of it's, I am a broker, I am an underwriter. It's not I do this. And so that's that identity element that comes through. So I think there's pockets of that. We're seeing a lot in manufacturing. Albeit that's probably sort of more machine learning rather than a Gen AI perspective, but I think it's accelerated the notion of that. Although I would say manufacturing has definitely been sort of coming along on that journey for a while. I would say within pockets of organizations, marketing are probably the teams that are embracing it more. And who I think there was so many tools, I think, in the marketing space that has helped that. And what I would love to see is more of the people teams getting involved in it. Because I think it is about transformation. And where I am in organizations where the people team are at the table and driving those conversations and part of those conversations, I think that's where I'm seeing more of a higher adoption, higher engagement, better communication, a better collaboration, more feedback loops coming through. So I have a real passion, and the team are really bored of me saying it. I believe this is HR and people's time. Because to your point, I know it's about technology, but I really think this is about people teams and HR teams. And I think this is their time as part of this whole moving forward from a leadership perspective and a business perspective.
So just on that then, that's a really interesting point that HR professionals, learning directors, they're able to sort of think about this from a personal development perspective. And I mean, they own culture. They should own culture and that sort of the cultural transformation within the organization. But are they there yet? I mean, I know we're generalizing for our whole profession, but are they there yet? Do the tools exist, or are they almost still looking at this from that perspective of how to address the concerns that people have that AI is coming for their jobs? Because we talked about at the beginning this kind of trust question, and I wonder whether at the moment there's just so many concerns around the impact on jobs that we haven't yet started to unpack the opportunities around how this can augment and enable people and empower people.
Yeah, I think there are pockets that are, and there's pockets that aren't. And I'm seeing the ones that are, I just want more of them to be in that space, because I think there are some situations where it's more transactional. And it is, to your point, and understand it, I completely agree. We need to address that concern. But where I've seen phenomenal, like the learning team working with the data and AI team, see that working well. I think the languaging of training and comms and everything is different. And so if we could, when they work together, I see it hitting a really good sweet spot. And I think that helps us work on a meaning perspective as well. And I think you'll get better returns. I think, as with all teams, I think there's people that are getting it and there's people that aren't. I'm on a mission to have more people, just because of my sort of background, more people teams involved.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. And it kind of led us back to what we talked about at the beginning in terms of, what the role of the leadership is, both the CEO setting the vision, the leadership team being able to understand some of these nuanced conversations about the organizational structure and how to optimize the organization and how to give permission to each of those teams to be able to do that. And particularly the L&D being the engine of driving this cultural change. Amazing. Well, we're going to have to start to wrap things up. But before we do, I wanted to kind of understand how we could stay in touch and find out more about Illuminate and the work you're doing.
Thank you. So yeah, our website, illuminateai.co.uk, is getting, my parenthesis is it's getting an overhaul, but that's definitely a way for us to keep in touch. Or follow the team on LinkedIn, definitely myself and Billy, the CEO. We are actually, just as I think about it, we're doing on September the 11th. I think we're going to do a sort of a people people team focus session with Microsoft, which is really exciting. So for CHROs and CPOs, and so there'll be information coming out on that as well.
Amazing. That sounds like a great event. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed the conversation there around how you can really drive cultural and technology change, and how they're sort of really closely linked, and the roles of the leaders to really sort of drive that from the top, but also the managers to bring that to life. And we've got into some really interesting areas there, and particularly this concept that there really shouldn't be experts anymore, because there's the field is just too broad. And actually what we're signaling when we say that we're not an expert is that we're making ourselves humble and vulnerable. We're taking away those feelings of shame, which helps our organization, gives them permission to also learn in that sort of slightly more iterative way, which enables us all to just go back to the fun in our jobs, learning and playing, and learning from playing, but being able to learn the things which are really important to us. And only when an organization can do that can it find things which are relevant to its to each individual's own job. Does it become relevant, and then people realize the power of AI, and they can actually use it to address some of those business needs. So thank you so much, Kirsty. You really helped to bring all that together to give us a really good insight onto how to drive that transformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. An absolute delight to meet you.